Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me again for another episode of, Microsoldering UK, should I call it. I haven't really got a clue what to call this program yet, so yeah, it's up to you. Let you come up with some ideas if you want. I'm still quite new to all of this, so let's get on with it. What we have here is we've got a logic board someone sent in for FPC connector repair. Basically, as you can see, all of the pads have been pulled from the FPC connector. I'll show you on the other camera here. So that's the board, board overview. They've sent me the connector in. So I've got the connector here, that one there. Took them quite a while to find this connector. So I said, since I'm new to doing all of this YouTube stuff, doing the live streaming, I will do a video on it and show them how the repair is done. So let's go back to the microscope view again, and as you can see, this is where the old connector was, and you can see that we have, two pads remaining. We got this one here, that one there we can see. So then we've also got this other pad here, and all of the rest of them have basically been torn from the board. The only way of doing this, fortunately, I had a look in advance. I had a quick look, and very fortunately, all of these traces that you can see here are going to pads just above the connector, so none of them seem to be going straight through into to vias in the board, which certainly makes this a job that basically can be done, rather than a job that would be an absolute, complete and utter nightmare. So that it brings it more into the realms of affordability, really. Once you can see that all of the all the pads are available, then we can connect to them all. So I can see that one used to go down here to there. I can see the next one. You just have to trace them down. I don't think I'm not sure yet. I'm in two minds about it. I wasn't sure if I should go to the pads here, which are easily available, or whether I should just scrape away from the nearest point and then put the jumper straight from the nearest point onto here. I think that might be an easier option, actually, is to just scrape a bit of the pad away here, run a tiny jumper on, solder mask it into place, and then that's then ready for the connector to go on top. The other option I could do is I could put the connector on first. You can see these are the old parts of the connector that just need removing before I put the new one on. The new connector I think I'm going to have to super glue down, because once it's in place, there's really not going to be much other than this and this here to hold it down. There's no real mechanical fixture here. So yeah, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try and scrape all of these away. These are quite close, so I will probably use the pads on these ones, as you can see there. And then as they start getting further away, then I will then probably use the remaining trace that's going down to the pad. So that's what we're looking to do. It's quite a tricky job. It's not the easiest in the world. I have quoted the customer a little bit more for this job due to the intricacy involved. So all we're going to do first is we're going to scrape back bits where we can and pull off any. See, like that's loose. There's no point keeping that part of it. So that's okay. That's all right. That's okay there. That's been scraped away a bit. I'm going to try and revive this one and get that up and running so we can get that. That one, yeah, let's use that. If I can connect the trace to it, if I can connect the micro jumper to it, great. If not, I'll go back to source. So that one there, another one here. So we just start scraping it away. It's quite a tedious job, really. It's not going to be the quickest kind of let's just jump in there, let's do the job, stick the port on, and we're out of here. Which is why I did quote the customer a little bit more on this. So it's been a bit of a quiet week this week. I've had a bit of a chance to catch up with my queue. It's very rare actually for that to happen, so it's a nice little kind of respite from the usual where you're just constantly firefighting. These are really close together, these ones here, so I'm trying not to scrape anywhere other than the trace that I want for that part, because otherwise I could end up creating a short circuit later down the line. So here you can see we're just scraping away little bits of the traces in order to create a path to make a jumper. So I'm just using a tiny scalpel to do this. Little tiny scalpel, scrape away, scrape away. Going to use the same here. That's it. We're getting a bit further away here, getting a little bit more access, so it's getting a little bit easier. I think if someone was first starting to get into microsoldering, this is not a bad repair to do, because it is, you know, it's a challenging repair. However, it's not one where you can't see things like the if you're hold on a sec. If you're putting on a chip on the board, then you can't see if any of the pads are physically done. You can't really test it afterwards until you've switched the device on. You're literally just gonna hope that it's worked when you plug it all in. Whereas at least with this, you can test each of the traces one by one and go, yeah, that should work. Which is why I've accepted this as a board-only job as well, because I can physically test each pad is connected before it goes back to the customer. And then, in theory, I say in theory it should work. So, you can see there we've got every single one now as being exposed. So this is a 30 pin connector, this is. So we've got to reconnect 30 pins onto the FPC. I'm not sure if any are redundant, so I'm just going to connect them all. I imagine, as there is with most things, there are some redundant pins. However, I don't have the schematics, and I don't really have the inclination to go and hunt down the schematics in order to do that. I'd much prefer to just connect every single pin, and then, you know, we go from there. So that's all of those done. You can see I've just put some isopropyl on. I'm just buffing it up a little bit now. You can see we now have access to each and every single one of them. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to get some flux. So flux goes onto these two little pads here, and I'm going to put some flux along the top here, because if I don't use flux, we're not going to get good adhesion for solder onto these traces. So that's that bit. Right, let's get the soldering iron out, and first of all, I'm going to remove these mounts that are surplus to requirement. So this one here, let's see how easy this board melts. We don't know yet. I've never tried doing anything on this board yet, so I'm just going to flow some leaded solder onto it, and then we'll see if I can get this to melt quite easily, or whether I'm going to have to go away from my micro pencil to something a bit more chunky. It all depends on the ground plane. It doesn't look like that's melting very readily. No. So let's go with Senor Chunky. There we go. That's why you've got to have multiple irons. You look at this one here, you look at the size of that tip in comparison to the other one. It can just suck up so much more heat. And then it just brings those off no problem at all. So you need to make sure in this game that you've got multiple irons. So I'm going to put some solder onto there, some solder onto there. Hope you can see that. Yep, that's okay. So they're ready now for the next connector to go on. Next bit is for me to tin these pads. So the ones that I've just prepared before, where I'm going to put jumpers. So all I'm going to do now is, as you can probably see on the microscope view, I'm going to run some fresh solder onto each of these, and we're just going to tin each of them going along. So they're the ones that I'm going to run straight from the pads. These ones here, as you can see, I'm putting solder on each of these bits where I've just exposed. So all I've got a little blob. Notice on that one there, that's just shorted out there because I've not got enough flux on that area of the board. So I'm going to blob a little bit more flux on and we'll go on again. There we go, much better. See what I say about flux? It really does make the job so much easier. I've had people send boards in to me and they've attempted it without flux. They've sent it in to me and all I've literally done is added flux to the board and redone their work. Exactly the same, but with flux. And that was all they were missing from their job, was the flux. So that is all of those pads done. So I'm going to do this one down here, which remains. I'm going to do this one down here, which remains. I can see why that one stayed, because that is a ground pad. They've usually got very good adhesion to the board. On those ones, on the two that remain, I'm going to get some solder wick. And with the solder wick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wick off these two pads that remain here. I don't want those getting in the way. So the reason I put solder on them, fresh solder, was because I wanted them to be tinned fresh. It has had a good job at trying to pull off that. You can see where it's actually wrinkled. I will just check. I'll rub this solder mask away a bit here. I don't want this whole job to fail purely because the ground pad isn't connected. So, looks okay, that. Looks like it's all connected going back. That's fine, that one. We're okay. So, what we're going to do now is we are ready to run some jumpers. So, beforehand, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to clean this up and I'm going to have to put some solder mask in first, because if I don't put solder mask in, then where these pads used to be is going to be ridiculously low down. So it will basically be dinted into the board. So I'll be trying to get the pads, these micro jumpers, reconnected, and it'll be too low down on the board. So I'm just gonna clean these up here with some isopropyl, and then these holes in the board, which are basically where the pads used to be, I'm just gonna fill it up with some solder. Sorry, not solder, with some solder mask. So I'm using red solder mask, purely because you can see it a little bit easier. So you can see here, I'm just dabbing it into the holes. And it's flowing in because it is dinted down more than it should be. Gonna try and just brush across here. There's no true technique to this. You just kind of trying to fill these holes in a little bit, because otherwise, oh yeah, try not to do what I've just done and get it onto the pins, onto the exposed traces, because I really do need to connect stuff to those in a minute. Okay. So we're nearly done on this bit. I know it's tedious. You want to try doing it for a living. Just pushing a bit to the end, pushing a bit to the end. That's it. But we do need to fill those in, because otherwise they would be they would literally be too deep for me to easily get what's the name, to easily get the new trace to go on. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit. I'll try and clean up a bit at the top here where I got it onto the new exposed. There we go. I think we are good to go there. Doesn't look amazingly pretty, but it doesn't have to, as long as it's functional. So we're going to get the UV curing lamp now. I'm going to cure that part. So let's go over to camera 4. I'm just going to cure that. It just takes 1 minute to cure. I don't generally do these jobs that much. These are classed as a kind of a bit of a change from the norm. So most of my repairs are related to iPhones. Most of them are for kind of IC repair, pry damage repair. Oh, there's so many different things to be done on iPhones. I'd say TriStar is probably one of the biggest. It's going a little bit now though. What's his name? Hydra seems to be a lot more efficient than TriStar. So we're not having as many problems, but the audio problem with iPhone 7 seems to be pretty bad still. Everyone's experiencing that. Right, so back to this one anyway. Let's go back to the camera. So now we're just going to do some micro jumpers now from each of these pads. This is where it gets pretty tedious. So I'm going to run a little tiny jumper from each and every single one of these. Okay, so it goes across. Let's get some nice tweezers. Okay, and we're going to push that there, down, into place, and then we're going to get a scalpel. See if we can find a decent scalpel in the place. Decent scalpel, and then I'm just going to snip it off there. Right, going to do the same again. Now, in order to do this, you are going to need, if you're going to do this job, you're going to need a micro pencil or the world's smallest soldering iron. These really are tiny. These tips are absolutely minuscule in comparison to a normal soldering iron. You really cannot do this kind of job without the tiniest of the tiniest soldering tips. So all we're doing is we are literally going dab onto the pad to connect it, and then we're getting either the scalpel or the tweezers, bending it over into place and then connecting it up. And then we go to the next one. We've already tinned all of these, so we're using the solder that we tinned onto them before. Okay. They were the easy ones. So now for the trickier ones. This one's not that tricky actually. So you can see we're just connecting to each and every single one pad at a time. So and this is if the customer is watching now, I don't know whether I said I'll give them the link once the video's done. If the customer is watching now, they can really see the exact reason why there's a small extra charge for this kind of work, because imagine I was putting a connector on this that was supplied to me, and how long it would take, and then imagine how long this is taking to do instead. So it does add a hell of a lot of time to the job, but I do enjoy it. It's a nice little change for viewers as well, to be able to see a slightly different type of video. So that's another reason why I've offered to do this, and also to do it kind of quite quickly at a good price. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions. I know it's not a popular stream at the moment, this, so there's not many viewers on at the moment watching, but you know, feel free to engage if you want. I have got my Mac next to me. So I can answer any questions that people have got. So we're just running these jumpers one at a time. Trying to get good adhesion to each one. Now, if something does go wrong with one of these, fortunately they are easily visible. So when the connector goes on, I will be able to redo ones if they don't work. So if one of these suddenly, you know, falls off the board after I've done it, or needs reconnecting after the connector's gone in, and that is entirely possible to do. So that one there that I'm doing now just needs a little bit of extra solder on it. There we go. That's stuck now. So the pad that I'd done originally didn't really have a great deal of solder on, so I just added a bit more to the tip, and then we go again. So pull some more of this wire off, try again. Next one, that's okay. And we'll have to inspect all of these closer in a minute, but we're doing a rough job for now. going rough, get them into place, and then we'll check them later. We'll check them more in depth later. Got my multimeter jabbing into my leg. Okay, I think we're getting there. There's a lot to do, so bear with me. It's not the most exciting part for a YouTube video. And this is, if you're ever watching the Chinese videos that they do it, this is where they speed it all up. It's where they speed the whole video up and go, hey, look at this, I've done this in 2 minutes. In reality, it takes longer. Some of them won't connect either. Some of them you're there forever trying to get the connection into place. And that's that one in. Just going to clean my tip now, and I'm going to put a little bit more solder on there, a little bit more fresh solder. So that's okay. There we are. Another pad. That's the one. We're getting there, it's not far off now. So you're basically looking to do one of these at a time. There's no easier way of doing it. Literally no easier way of doing it. Just make sure I'm on the right camera. Yeah, still on the right camera. Pull that down, push that into place. Okay, and I think we're about to have to open the shop now, so I will carry this on tomorrow for you. You've seen enough of it so far. We'll get a move on in the morning with more of the repair. So thanks for joining me so far, and you've seen it so far. I'll show you the rest tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.